We have Magnus Carlsen on our screens. He is in Germany at Karlsruhe for the Grenke Open 2026. He's going to play in the freestyle section, of course, and Magnus Carlsen makes his way to the playing hall along with Sebastian Ziebricht, the chief chess officer of freestyle chess, and also shaking hands with Sven Nopes, the guy behind Grenke Open. And Magnus, well, last year he won with a score of 9 out of 9. Will he manage to do that this year as well? Is the question. And there we see Magnus shaking hands with Nepo, with Nodirbeck. What a tournament this is actually. Nepo, Nodirbeck, Hans Niemann, Levon Aronian, Jan Krzysztof Duda, Dominguez, Nihal Sarin. It's an absolutely top class encounter. And Peter Lecco there is seen, who's going to do the commentary as Magnus makes his way to the stage. But before going ahead, he gets himself a glass of water. He knows once he's out there, he will have to stay there because he's coming in front of a crowd of close to 4,000 people. And there you see applause for Magnus as he comes on stage. Look at that. Grenke Open is the world's biggest open with 4,000 people taking part, record numbers. And they are all so excited to see Magnus on stage. And Magnus, of course, becoming a part of this Grenke Open because Freestyle has collaborated with them. And Freestyle this year has 3 spots for the World Championship. And there you see Magnus coming in. And he is going to be facing Narmin Khalafova. Narmin is a WGM from Azerbaijan, and Magnus looks a bit sort of tired for the first round. We have the freestyle position. Let's try to also see, and there's a big screen where Magnus is seeing what's happening. And Jan Nepomniachtchi is here. And look at Jan. I think they're going to have a good time here. Both are good friends of each other. I want to show you the position that is there on the board. We have a rook in the corner. Magnus arranging the pieces now because it's come up there. King next to it. Queen, rook, bishop, bishop, knight, knight. So, Hans Niemann passes from behind. And we have Narmin entering here and shakes hands. Magnus respectfully gets up. It's going to be a very interesting game because Narmin is a strong player. But of course, Magnus world class. So these first round clashes in the open section is always nice to see. Now, the rook is on the same position as what it would be in normal chess. The king, queen, rook, bishop are different. And then the bishop is on f1 and then there are 2 knights. So generally you want to start opening up your bishop. So e4 makes a lot of sense as it opens the bishop. There's also d4 as it opens the queen and the bishop. And by the way, before we look at the position more in detail, you can see how the setup is. There are the players, there are the people, and there's crowd, and Levon you could see there in the background. There's Nepo, there's Dominguez, and Magnus. He's completely focused on the job at hand because, for him, it's an important event here to be able to win it again would assert his dominance over the freestyle chess format. And we have the guest of honor there who asks Magnus what is the first move that he should play. And Magnus says, I don't know. And actually in freestyle chess, it really is difficult to know what to play. And maybe he's played a move that was pretty good. Magnus himself is thinking, well, was that move pretty good or not? I think it's d4 that he has played on the board. Okay, what a big moment for Narmin Khalafova, WGM from Azerbaijan. And this will be, she's rated 2200. And I think that's what makes Grenke Open so special. You get a chance to play against the best in the business. I remember last year Harshit Raja was playing here. He got to play against Arjun Erigaisi as well as Jan Nepomniachtchi, and that was really nice for him. So d4 opens the queen and the bishop. e4 opens the bishop. The knights are well positioned. You can play a4 at some point to bring your rook into the game. Castling is particularly tough here, I would say. You have to get your knight, bishop, other bishop, queen out of the way, and then the king can swing over with the rook to the king side. Queen side castling may be slightly more easy. You get your rook and queen out, and then you can long castle here. So these are the things for freestyle chess that have to be considered. And Magnus is a bit surprised about what's happening. And they shake hands. And off we go. Magnus keeps that move on the board. He keeps the move d4 on the board. And Nepo comes in. Magnus like, what's going on? What's happening? And let's go. So Narmin now plays her pawn to d5. She plays the symmetrical move. And Magnus, what's his move going to be? He brings his pawn up to f3. And I think a very logical move. He wants to push pawn to e4. So Narmin goes knight to f6, trying to stop that move. Already it's very difficult to understand what's happening in the opening. Magnus pushes his pawn to g4 here. Very nice move, by the way, because gains space, wants to push g5 at the right time. And Narmin goes a5. She's learned that pushing the rook pawns when your rook is on a8 cannot be a bad idea. So she does it. And Magnus now plays pawn to a4. He also equalizes the space. e6 is not particularly a great move. Maybe there was knight g6. But e6, knight comes to g3. You will see that an experienced freestyle player will start making moves that are more harmonious in nature. c5. This does weaken a bit the b5 square. But now Magnus goes e4, a lovely move. And the thing is, if you take here, I'll play first g5 and then take it back with either the pawn or the knight. So he goes pawn takes pawn, cd4. She goes pawn takes pawn. And now g5. And she brings her knight back to d7. Very complicated. Takes the pawn on d5. Maybe not the best move by Magnus, but now e5 is what could be very powerful if Narmin plays it. And she does play it. So Magnus goes f4. And now f6. Keeping everything together would be very strong. But she goes knight g6, which is a mistake. She goes wrong here. And now Magnus can actually get an advantage here. Because after pawn takes pawn, the d4 pawn would become a weakness. And Magnus thinking here, he takes on e5. And Narmin now, well, she takes back with the knight. Okay, maybe her point is that if you play rook d4, she can. By the way, going knight f3 is not possible. There's a knight. All very unusual stuff, but bishop c5 may be possible to hit here. So Magnus goes knight 1 e2, a nice move. He's attacking this pawn and rook takes d5 is taken. Now knight takes d4 makes a lot of sense. So he takes here. He goes bishop g2 even. Attacking the rook. Narmin goes back. Rook d8. And now Magnus simply chops off the pawn. Knight takes d4 is on the board. And she goes queen to g4. Being very aggressive, hitting the knight with the rook and the queen. Magnus defends it with bishop e4. He could have even pushed the queen away with h3, but bishop e4 makes a lot of sense. And now bishop to e7 played. A nice move, hitting the pawn on g5. And Magnus goes h3. Well, taking queen takes g5 makes a lot of sense now. She does take it. Very good move. So the point was, if you took here, then bishop f5 and the queen is really sidelined. So queen g5 I like. Queen takes, bishop takes. And Narmin has a playable position. It's very nice to see after nearly 16 moves. So that's very nice. Now Magnus goes knight f5. He's eyeing the g7 pawn. And maybe a good move now is bishop d7. Because if you take knight g7, there is bishop takes h3. And black is the one who's doing well. So bishop f6 played by Narmin. She tries to defend the pawn on g7. But now bishop to g3 played, pinning on this diagonal. And rook to a6. Getting the rook into the game. And we have rook to e1. Just simply sidelining the rook. Just putting pressure on this knight here on e5. And Narmin goes bishop d7. Magnus would love to get his final piece into the game. Maybe long castle is on the cards. He goes knight to b5. Somehow making use of all the squares available in the position. And now Narmin goes wrong. She goes bishop takes f5. And Magnus says, well, thank you. Because now it's as if bishop takes g6, bishop takes e5. Everything's hanging. And you can see the look on Magnus's face. He knows that he's winning now. It's somehow just completely gone down. Let's imagine king a8. There is knight c7. There's no king c8. There are no really good moves left actually. Rook e8 could be possible, but then I just long castle here. So she goes rook d5 here, defending the knight in the center of the board. And actually you can long castle because the king is going here and the rook to d1. So you can long castle in such a position. And c4 played by Magnus. Rook comes to c5. And Magnus now goes king c1 and long castle. Very nice move. Giving up even the pawn on c4 with a check, because he simply will tuck his king to the corner of the board. Rook c6 played. And a very solid move can be b3. Just simple chess. But Magnus simply goes king. He's going for the king. King b1. And the point is, if you take on c4, I have bishop g6. You can't take with the knight. So you have to take here and then bishop e5 and you lose a piece. So that's the reason why the move b6 played by Narmin here. And now Magnus can play pawn to b3. I like how Magnus has dealt with this game. Actually, it's quite complicated in a sense because, you know, his advantage is very positional in nature rather than being anything tactical or anything of that sort. Knight jumps back to e7. Some tactics should create a lot of mess here. You can see Magnus looking there. So the knight already controls these two squares. The bishop is controlling here. Can we go for a check? King here. He goes for a check. King b7 is met with maybe bishop e5. And if bishop e5, you have rook d7 and you lose this. So if you play knight f5, then rook b8 check leads to a lot of material losses. Check and maybe here you will win material. So anyway, she goes knight c8, and Magnus now plays rook e8, again increasing the pressure on the pinned piece. She goes g6, and now I think the final move that Magnus can make here, a very strong move, is bishop to d7. The rook runs out of space everywhere. The bishop attacks here and he finds it. Bishop d7, and Narmin is completely tied up. Her pieces cannot move, and Magnus is completely winning, and she resigns. And you can see them discussing over there. Narmin talking about certain possibilities. Magnus saying I can go castles, but there's a rook on d8. And well, in freestyle chess you can castle if the king does not pass through it. So Magnus starts off with a win. Very, very complex, this freestyle chess, for all those who are following, but it's also very beautiful in that sense, because there's nothing fixed, nothing that's already decided, pre-decided. So it's all on the board, and Magnus truly showing his class on the board beyond openings and beyond known theories.